All right, everybody, welcome. Today we have Robert with us. How you doing today, Robert?
Great. How you doing, Matt?
Doing well also, thank you. So before we get into your writing a little bit, let's talk about you. Who are you? Who is Robert?
Who is Robert? Well, Robert is a retired police officer of almost 30 years, and I had to try to figure out what I wanted to do once I retired. I've been retired a couple of years, but yeah, I've been writing my whole life, but just for me. I haven't been, I never tried or wanted to, wasn't interested in being published or anything like that up until a few years ago. And then I started that up. Other than that, I have 3 rescue dogs. I live in Southern California, and yeah, just spend time with my wife, and I have 2 adult children. 29, he's gonna be 30 next month, and then 26-year-old daughter.
Okay, awesome. You said San Diego, right? I think I saw that on your Amazon profile.
Yeah, it's around San Diego, right?
Okay, awesome. I'm originally from Santa Barbara, so in that area-ish, and we got some family and friends over in San Diego, of course, as well. So good to see another Southern Californian. I unfortunately had to relocate, so I live over in North Carolina now because I couldn't afford the $1.5 million 3-bedroom houses in Santa Barbara.
Oh gosh, yeah. I have no idea how anybody can afford any of that, but it's beautiful. Santa Barbara is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So, retired police officer, and so I looked at your genre, and it's not mystery. So, what drove you to not write mysteries?
I often I get that question every now and then. They figured I'm just going to write police procedurals or mysteries, detectives. My story is a little bit more detective, but I don't know. I didn't want to just rehash all that. I wanted a clean break for now. Maybe in the future I'd be interested in doing a police procedural or something like that. But I just wanted to. I needed some escapism, basically. You know, if I'm going to be writing anything, I need to write the book that I want to read, that I want to see on the shelf and grab, and it would not be police procedural.
Yeah, you kind of want to step away from the job after work, right?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Okay, so you had mentioned that you've been writing for a while, since you were young. Like, what kind of stuff did you write when you were younger, and what age did you really start at?
You know what? I actually remember being about 5 or 6 years old, and I made up a story called. Sorry for laughing. It's just so silly. Mary and John, where John had to rescue Mary all the time. This is what little boys think of, I guess. But anyway, again, it was mostly. I tell you what, I grew up watching a lot of like horror stuff. I had some mean cousins, and they used to like lock me in the closet and tell me that the ghost was coming, or they would make me stay up late and watch all this ridiculous 70s horror that was just so corny. But so lots of that, lots of Twilight Zone. So that's where my mind was going most of the time with my stories until my dad gave me a copy of Lord of the Rings. So I read that and I was blown away. But I like both. I really enjoy both of those genres. But most of my stories were more of what if this ridiculous thing happened.
Okay.
You know, kind of like what if a dragon just showed up in New York City? You know what I mean? Like, so it's something like a fantasy genre, but not epic fantasy. Not.
Okay. Do you think you ever see yourself writing epic fantasy someday?
I do, actually.
Awesome.
I do have something in the works. I am planning. I do want to write epic fantasy because it's just so amazing. The worlds are so amazing, and the characters and what's happening. So absolutely, yeah. I have notes on an epic fantasy right now.
That's cool. I've completed a fantasy sci-fi mashup. And first off, I love all your Star Wars posters in the back. That is just awesome. I hope my man cave will get there someday.
Thanks.
But would you say, if you had to pick and choose, what would you like better, fantasy or sci-fi?
Oh gosh, I'd probably pick the fantasy. I obviously love Star Wars, and it's more of I think it's fantasy in space. You know.
Yeah.
But I probably have way more fantasy books on my shelf than I do sci-fi. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what would you say? I think you said you had two books out, right? Is that what it is right
Right
now?
now, yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes,
And are they the same series or are they completely
they
separate?
are. No, they're the same series right now. It's Coil and Fang is my series. It's going to be a 6-book series. Um, I actually won an award for Best Debut 2022 with Realmmakers for Curse of Shadows. Curse of Shadows was my first book I've ever written. Like, I've never written a complete novel before. And I wrote that up, and I just thought, why not try to win something, and let's just see what they think about it. And I won, which has blown me away. But
Awesome.
I'm glad somebody else likes my book other than me.
Yeah, I feel like it's always a very vulnerable experience to put your writing out there, especially when you've poured maybe like a year into it or something and you've never shared with anybody before, and you're like, "Well, somebody like this? I don't know." So yeah, I definitely feel you on that one.
Right.
What would you say your own book is most like as far as work that's already out there?
Right. Um, well, it's a heist. It's a heist book. So, and I know Mistborn is something like a heist book. All of my books are kind of a mashup between Sherlock Holmes and Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible is all about the heist, about getting the object or getting the person. So that's what all my books are about. But I really loved Michael Crichton's. Oh gosh, that's one of my favorite books. I can't remember the title of it. Michael Crichton wrote. It was his first book too. Oh, The Great Train Robbery. Was just thrilling, just from start to finish, and I absolutely loved it. And I wanted to write something similar. Mine has a lot more fantasy / horror elements to it, but something along that vein.
Yeah, I mean, you could have just tossed out basically any one of Michael Crichton's titles and said that was the best, and I would be like, "Yeah, you're right." Yeah,
Right.
that's pretty good.
That's true.
Did he write? I forget if it was him or not. Did he write Rising Sun?
Yeah.
It was like, okay, yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting because he has such a wide range of stuff. He's got like Jurassic Park and Congo, kind of like this near future sci-fi stuff, and he's got like this detective novel. That's kind of what Rising Sun is, from I remember. And then there's like Prey, which is, yeah, he was great.
He's very science fiction, but and realism. I mean, he does a really good job with making you believe this could happen.
Yeah,
But
okay.
but that's probably, if somebody was going to ask me what's your book most like, it'd probably be that one, which I don't know how many people have read, but it's
I'll
in
have to
that
get around to
direction.
both of them, and I'll shoot you some notes or something.
Yeah.
So take one book to start and summarize the plot for me. I know you've given bits and pieces right now. Summarize the plot. So if someone were to, read the back, what would the back say?
Right. So the back of Curse of Shadows, the award-winning book, is about Sherlyn Coyle, who is a very novice but very, very good, brilliant detective. She wants to. She needs to find her ex-fiance who left her for dead. Her ex-fiance just happens to be Jack the Ripper. So she wants him. She left him for dead, so he also like kind of challenged her to come find him, and he's leading through each of these books. He's kind of leading her into all these different adventures, trying to find him. But
So this takes place in the 1800s?
yeah, 1892, and so it makes it even more difficult for her because she's right in the beginning of the book. She's a constable and she's trying to get detective, which is a ridiculous notion in that setting. We're talking about Victorian times, where its setting is in San Francisco, California, but women are obviously not given the same opportunities for any kind of promotion or advancement in that era. So it makes it even more difficult for her, but she's going to get what she wants, and she pulls through. So the other half of Coil and Fang is Fang, who is an assassin vampire who was pretty much made in a military lab. They wanted her for a secret weapon that's almost nearly unkillable, but she escapes, and she needs help finding a book called The Curse of Shadows, which is going to be used to change, innocent people into horrible monsters. So they team up and go find, put a stop to this person that's going to try to use this book.
Okay. So I was honestly surprised when you started giving the plot, and I found out, one, that there was one woman in there, because I've been told, it's a recurring motif that men just suck at writing women. And then there's two women. So where did you draw inspiration for these ladies? I'm assuming they're what you might call, strong-willed women or something like that.
Right.
And do you think that you wrote them well, or are you still learning in that journey, or how's that working out? Well,
I've always been attracted to really kick-ass female leads. Mm-hmm. That especially where they have to just push through the boundaries to either get what they want or get what they need, without using, as you kind of mentioned, where an author is going to use their sex appeal or something like that. I left all that. I didn't even touch any of that, because neither one of these women are interested in. They're both interested in justice. They're not. They both have agency. They're not interested in men. They're not waiting for a guy to rescue them. And so, if I wrote them well, here's what I did. After I wrote the book, I sent it to my 3 aunts, who are all obviously older than I am, and I wanted to see what they thought of it, because I figured if they give me some feedback of whatever kind on how I wrote these female characters, they would definitely let me know if they thought, hey, this is way too chauvinistic, or it's not, or whatever. And all of them loved it. Let my daughter read it, let my wife read it. Lots of other, most of the followers I have are female, just only because that's the more readers are female than male, generally. But I haven't heard or gotten any negative anything from any readers talking about them. Yeah, I just pretty much made them people. They're just people on a mission. Yes. But the only time it's ever brought up, especially, like I said, in this setting, the Victorian age, is when maybe they're trying to get into, or they're getting into some sort of a trouble or a situation, and there's usually a guy that's going to go, hey, is your husband here, kind of thing. Like, they just can't believe, like, this woman is doing all this stuff just by herself. But that's it. That's the only way any sort of weird, male thing is going to pop up with that.
Mm-hmm. So having it take place in the 1800s, do you have any, like, fake technology or at all, or is it kind of very strict and true?
Now, steampunk is usually defined as it's that Victorian age aesthetic, but with advanced machinery, advanced technology, if you will, usually steam driven. But to help with that, I've added fantasy races. I have gnomes, I have fae, vampires, obviously, trolls, or something like trolls and ogres. But so what I've made the gnomes to have, like, I even mentioned in the book that their technology is easily 50 or 60 years ahead. And so these characters have, like, a little earpiece that they've stuck into the ear to communicate. Just something like that. Is obviously you would never, ever have that. But that's how I got around it, because I wanted them to have some sort of, edge to them. Otherwise, it might be a little bit slow. But
awesome.
Yeah.
So do you have any deeper meaning in your novels? Any, like, themes, motifs, and stuff? Or would you say it's strictly entertainment? And if so, like, what kind of messages are you trying to get to your audience?
I would hope. I worked with a lot of female officers, and most of the time, they were just treated as officers, as they should be. Every once in a while, there was very, very few other officers. I would say, like, maybe, out of 100 officers, I'd say probably 2 or 3 were a little bit chauvinistic. But the female officers always did what they had to do, and they did it as well as any guy could do. So that's not the issue. But I I did appreciate that they had to push a little bit harder to be accepted, especially, and we're talking again over 100 years ago, where they had to push as much as they could, and I appreciate that, and I would hope that the story can convey that, look, you can get stuff done if you're a guy or a girl. You can get stuff done without dependent maybe on the opposite sex, because I think in a lot of books the females are going to be dependent on their strength or I don't know, whatever else the author is going to dream up, like, oh, they need a guy for this. But these two, I made these two female characters to be like, they seriously do not need any guy to get what's needed.
Do you have any side male characters in the book, or is it just kind of
I
focuses
do.
on these two?
No, I do have a few side male characters, and in the second and third book, and probably on, there will be a little bit romantic involvement, just not in the first book. I just wanted to introduce these two characters and show that they're absolutely kick-ass and they're going to go after whatever they want and whoever they want, whenever they want. But after book 2, I do introduce other side male characters, and some of them do have a romantic interest in these characters.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So changing direction a little bit, kind of going back, actually, you said you're a retired officer. Would you say that you write full-time now, or is it a part-time and a hobby and you just happen to get published? Or explain that to me a little bit.
No, I'm not doing anything else. I wanted to be retired for at least a year before I thought about doing something else. But this is pretty much what I do full-time, is write. Do this, and then of course work around the house, chores or what have you. But I don't have any other work, as it were. This is it.
How many hours a day would you say you write?
Oh gosh, obviously I'm retired, and I have a lot of time by myself. Probably easily 6 to 8 hours, and I wish I could say I write 6 to 8 hours, but I just don't. Probably my brain starts shutting down after 2.5 hours, probably. Like, it's like if I'm writing straight for 2.5 hours, my brain just says, hey, let's just take a walk or something. So I'd probably say 3 hours, three and a half, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Okay. And how long did it take you to finish your first novel then?
The first one took about 18 months, because mostly I had no idea what I was doing, so I started listening to podcasts.
Does anybody?
No, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but it's like I knew how to write, but like, how do you write good? How do you write in such a way that all of your ideas in your head translate well enough for people to get it and understand it and go, hey, this is decent. So I will say I listened to K.M. Weiland podcast, helping writers become authors is what I started listening to, doing yard work and stuff. And so I would just start practicing what she was putting out, and it finally worked, I guess. somebody, like I said, somebody else liked it besides me. So.
Yeah. That's a good segue into what has your journey to publication been like? Have you done self-publishing, or have you gone the more traditional route, or explain that to me a little bit?
So originally, I talked to a buddy of mine who's written 10 books. He has 10 published books with publishers. And he was telling me to stay away from self-publishing and telling me what it involves, because I didn't know anything about self-publishing. And so I said, yeah, I agreed with him. And so we started working on a book together, and then it didn't pan out. So I do know what you need to do to get traditionally published. I know you need to find an agent, and, you need to query and all this stuff. And it was, after almost 2 years, it was like, goodness gracious, let me look into this of nothing, and it was just so frustrating. But and it was after we got the green light. Like, yep, the agents and the publisher, yep, let's see it, this green light, let's go. And then like 2 years show up, and now we changed our mind. And it was and he's like, well, that's just what happens. I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah, it did for me. It was just very, but it was a good lesson. But yeah, so I started looking into self-publishing, and really studying it, and I immediately liked the aspect of control that you have in self-publishing, especially when to publish. You can publish whatever you want, whenever you want, um, and that just attracted me. And the more I looked into it, the more I found resources online, YouTube, or podcasts, or books. It was crazy. Yeah, I mean, I did all of that. I watched the videos, I read books, listen to people, listen to experiences of self-publishing, and I said, all right, let's do it, you know? So I found my editor, and then she encouraged me to go ahead, and she said, hey, this is good enough for a real publisher, you know, just try it. So I did. I sent out like about 6 to 10 letters. I knew it was going to get rejected because it's steampunk, and nobody reads steampunk. The mass market does not read steampunk right now. So yeah, all of them were rejected, rejection letters, which is fine. So, but anyway, yeah, I just went ahead and put it out myself.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I like to author sci-fi fantasy stuff as well, and I feel like there's definitely a market for it, but it's highly competitive. And then I was actually surprised to find that there's like a wider market for a lot of other stuff that, you know, maybe I would consider boring. Like romance novels, you know, maybe not my thing. And then there's the whole mystery and murder and all that stuff, which I know a lot of people like, but isn't my thing. And so you have to kind of determine, do I want to compete for a very tight spot in a publishing house where there's like, maybe they're going to publish 2 sci-fi a year, you know, whatever the number is. And do you want to compete with 500 other authors trying to do that, or just do the self-publishing route?
Right. Yeah, and it's totally up to you. Sometimes it's just someone's dream, and it's certainly validation, you know, for a publishing house to say, "Wow, you're a great writer. Let's go." I mean, that should be almost every writer's dream, is to they want somebody else, you know, to do that. Mm-hmm. But I do have decent sales. I do have very good reviews, and now I have an award, so I'll let that be my validation.
Yeah, that's a good enough validation.
Yeah.
how many sales across your books can you estimate that you have?
Oh gosh, not really, not a whole lot, because so the other part of self-publishing is marketing, and marketing is not something I am really good at all. And so if you don't market, then you're not going to make any sales. I just published an audiobook, which did pretty decent. But yeah, I mean, as far as like numbers, like money, probably maybe $1,000 right now. It was published last year, so just about that. I mean, so not a whole lot at all. But
yeah, well, it's interesting. You mentioned like the whole marketing thing. I was talking to another gentleman. I'll send you his podcast if you want.
Sure.
But he was telling me how like writing is just one part of it, because then, like you said, there's the marketing, and then you have to do the deals with everybody, and then you have to. It's like a whole entrepreneurship, little business, a little small business when you decide to be an author, as opposed to just, you know, hey, here's some words I scratched out on the page, everybody be happy.
Yeah, you're right, and you know, we're talking about self-publishing, but even if you're traditionally published, they're only going to push it the once, and then they need to move on to the next book. You know, they're not pushing all the time either. They want you to have a platform. They want you to have, you know, you have your own website and your own following and all that. So it's almost like they have to do the same thing. If they want to sell books, then they're going to have to, you know, get something going on. Look for conventions, or, you know, or what have you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you have anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, I think, but yeah, I appreciate what you're doing, and I hope more people look into self-publishing. I feel like it's a lot worth it. It's definitely worth it, and if you're with KDP exclusive, I mean, 70% of every dollar is a lot better than I think I was going to get offered 7%. With that publishing house, so it's a huge, you know, you want 7 cents or do you want 70 cents out of every sale? So it's really, but it's a lot of work, obviously, but if you do it, you can do it well, and I feel like it doesn't matter what genre or what you run and write. There's somebody out there that wants to read your book, so I just want to encourage anybody else to just get to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your insights, and we'll end it there.
Okay. Thank you. It's great meeting with you. Thank you.